The Amazing Spider-Man teaming up with The Dark Knight. Today on Spider-Fan. Hello, my wonderful webbed wonders, and welcome to another exciting episode of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Fan, the podcast that combines Spider fandom with saving faith, brought to you by Geek Devotions, a network of podcasts of devoted geeks who are devoted to letting you know that you are loved. That's right. If you don't listen past this moment, know that you are loved. You were made by your Creator with a purpose. You have been redeemed by our Savior Jesus Christ, and there is no accident that you are sitting right now listening to this podcast. So if nothing else, know this: you're loved, you're cared for, you're redeemed for a purpose. So right now, in this wonderful month of August, Geek Devotions is going through what is called Bat Month, where all of the devotions and special episodes are centered around the Dark Knight himself, Batman. And, well, you may be thinking, but this is a Spider-Man podcast. Why are we talking about Batman? Well, it just so happens that my favorite webhead did, on occasion, team up with the Dark Knight himself, teamed up with Batman to battle some really bad uglies, and I'm going to talk about one of those adventures today. In the late 90s, and let me just say, the 90s was an awesome decade for comic books in general. I mean, so many cool things were happening in comics, and one of them was that DC and Marvel, every once in a while, would learn to play together nice. And from that, we get these crossover events. Like, I don't know if some of my older listeners may remember the Amalgam universe, where DC and Marvel literally like coexisted in this big epic fight. The famous comic book artist George Perez did a run called JLA and Avengers, where the Justice League and the Avengers actually teamed up in a multiversal challenge. And there have been other team-ups, like I know Neil Adams penciled a team-up with Superman and Spider-Man. I have somewhere on my bookshelf a team-up between Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, and Silver Surfer. And one of the team-ups was between Batman and Spider-Man. Now, the issue I'm going to be talking about today is actually not a part 2, but it is a second issue. When they did this run, they released 2 titles. One was called Spider-Man and Batman, and that story was published by Marvel Comics. That was drawn by Mark Badgley, which in my opinion is one of the greatest Spider-Man artists ever to have walked the earth. Second only to the great Steve Ditko, who actually created the character, helped create the character. But then the other one was called Batman and Spider-Man, published by DC, and that's the one I'm going to talk about today, primarily because that's the one that I own. The name of the story was called New Age Dawning. It was written by J.M. DeMatteis, penciled by Graham Nolan, inked by Carl Kiesel, colored by Gloria Vasquez, and lettered by John Costanza. I might have said that wrong. But anyhow, this was the DC arm of it. And it actually takes place after the Marvel Comics one. There's a couple of instances of the dialogue where you get the impression that Spider-Man and Batman have met before, and I think the idea was they had met in the Marvel Comics version of the Batman Spider-Man team-up. In that version, they fought against the Joker and Carnage, who had teamed up. In this specific one, they're fighting against Ras al Ghul and the Kingpin. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed the fact that the story opens with Batman and Spider-Man already knowing each other. Don't get me wrong, I love team-up stories. I think they're great, especially when they cross universes like this and you see superheroes teaming up with people you thought they could never team up with. Most of my comic collection involves team-ups like that. But I like the idea that they already know each other, so we get straight into the cool part of the story. We don't have to spend a lot of time talking about, okay, how do the heroes meet? Inevitably, the heroes misunderstand each other. They argue. And we got to get past that before they really start to work together and really start to come to some kind of resolution on the plot. Because this is kind of taking place after Batman and Spider-Man have already met, we skip all that. We go straight to Batman and Spider-Man working together to solve this case. Basic plot of the story is that Ras al Ghul is plotting to flood New York and let it be the start of a process by which he is going to take over the world. Surprise, surprise. That's what Ras al Ghul is always trying to do. He's trying to kill mankind so he can rule over it. And he is using the Kingpin's smuggling operations as a means to get his resources into New York so he can cause the big flood. And as a carrot to kind of lure the Kingpin into willingly going along with the plan, the Kingpin's wife, Vanessa, is sick with a seemingly uncurable cancer. And what he dangles in front of the Kingpin is, I have a cure for your wife's cancer. If you agree to work with me, if you agree to help me, then I'll give you the cure to the cancer. I'll set you up as a duke or ruler of some sort over what will be left of New York. And then you can rule with your wife healthy at your side for the rest of humanity or whatever. And the Kingpin, because he's so desperate to save his wife, agrees. So that's where we bring Batman and Spider-Man in together. Batman's investigating Ras al Ghul's presence in New York City. Spider-Man is investigating what the Kingpin is up to. They meet. They realize, oh, hey, we're working the same case. Let's just work together. And it goes about the way you'd expect. Spider-Man's cracking joke after joke after joke, and Batman's just having none of it. He's like, seriously, you talk too much. Shut it. And it's predictable, but that's what makes it so endearing, is they react exactly how I would expect they react. Batman takes himself way too seriously. Spider-Man can't stop making corny jokes, and the two of them, it's like watching The Odd Couple. It's really great. It's a wonderful time. The artwork is fantastic. It is very, very it's very, very 90s. Like I said before, the 90s for comics was just such an amazing time. And I know people give a hard case about the types of stories that were being written in, but y'all, that was an idyllic time for comics. It was comic books at their peak before they transitioned into movies. The comics in especially the mid to late 90s, that's when they were the best that they could be, before people started thinking, hey, if we write this the right way, we could turn this into a movie one day. Now, that's not to knock the X-Men movies or the Spider-Man movies or any of those movies that came out that gave us this golden age of superheroes on the silver screen. I love that happened. But something that I think suffered was people started writing the comic books for the express intention of having it turned into a movie or having it turned into a TV show. And in the mid to late 90s, that concept really hadn't broken yet. So they were drawing comics for the sake of comics. And you can really see that in this issue. The art is there for the sake of the artwork. You can tell they're not trying to storyboard a movie. They're trying to visually tell a story on the page, and it really, really comes through just in the panel arrangement, the color choice. I really love how when Batman is the main figure, the colors are dark and brooding, and when Spider-Man's the main character on the scene, the colors are a little more vibrant, and that really reflects their personality. Because obviously Spider-Man's the guy that just can't shut up. He keeps joking and joking and joking. And Batman, of course, is the dark, brooding character. The team-up of Wilson Fisk and Ras al Ghul is a team-up I did not know that I would have enjoyed as much as I did. But when you think about it, they're the perfect pair, because the Kingpin sees himself as a king or a lord, so to speak, of the crime in New York City, and ultimately wants to be just the king of New York City. Ras al Ghul sees himself as a king of sorts over all of mankind. And so their ambitions are very, very similar, maybe for the different reasons. Ras al Ghul thinks he's saving the planet from the evil man. Kingpin doesn't care about saving anybody. He just wants the power. But both of them, for different reasons, desire power. And so them teaming together, it works so well. And to see them talk to each other, because they're both calculating villains. They're both the kind of bad guys that they don't just go up and try to hack and slash you like Carnage does, or Venom, or Bane, who just tries to utterly bust your head open, or the Joker, who just wants to shoot you a whole bunch of times. They're more calculating than that. They don't want to just beat you. They want to utterly destroy you, both body, mind, and soul. And so they're both calculating, and to watch them interact with each other is really, really interesting. And it works. It works really well, because you don't get the impression that the Kingpin is really willingly going along with what Ra's is doing. He feels more manipulated. And so he does things to try to manipulate Ra's into doing things. And Ra's does things that it's this amazing, like I said, a 4D chess thing. They're both calculating. I mean, that they're not physical villains at all. Their henchmen do most of the fighting. Most of the people that Batman and Spider-Man physically fight with are the goons. But these rulers of evil are kind of sitting on their thrones and calculating. And it's really, really interesting. I don't know if J.M. DeMatteis intended to do this, but we actually get a very interesting cross-section of relationships in this story. We've got Spider-Man, who is married to Mary Jane. We've got Batman, who is in love with Talia, Ras al Ghul's daughter, but they find themselves on opposite ends of the law. We have the Kingpin, who is married to Vanessa and is like dangerously devoted to her. Like in one of the scenes, one of the doctors basically tells him, look, your wife isn't going to get better. Instead of focusing on a cure, maybe you should just spend time with her and enjoy these last moments with her. And the Kingpin gets mad and like kills him. Just right there. He's like, I don't like your opinion. You're dead. And then you have Ras al Ghul, who doesn't have a significant other. I mean, clearly at some point he had at least one, because Talia came around. But at this point in the story, he doesn't have a significant other. He has only his mission. So you've got this cross-section of relationships. You've got Spider-Man and Mary Jane, who represent the healthy relationship. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Spider-Man fan. I mean that sincerely. It's a healthy relationship because in it, you see this moment where Peter and Spider-Man where Peter and Mary Jane are sitting there, they're talking, and Peter is on his way out to patrol for the night, and Mary Jane's like, just be careful, be safe, and it's very much this, bye honey, I'm going to work now. And Mary Jane's like, I know you're going out there and people are going to be shooting at you and trying to kill you, but I have faith in you. You can do this. The go get 'em tiger moment, just the moment that you're like, wow, that is awesome. And then later we see where Peter's talking with Mary Jane and he's like, sweetie, I'm going to be gone for a few days. It could be a few weeks. I can't really tell you the details, but just know that if you don't hear from me for a while, I'm okay. I'm okay, and I promise I'm going to come back to you. And you can tell that Mary Jane's obviously worried, but it's just this understanding they have of, I have a mission, I have something I need to achieve, and I need to go do it. And she backs his play. She's right there. She supports him. She's like, hey, go do what you need to do, and I'll be waiting here for you when you come back. And it's just this, for all of the flack that Peter and Mary Jane have been through in modern comics, to see that wholesome moment between husband and wife where the husband's like, I got to go do this thing. And the wife is like, hey, I've got your back. I support you. You go do what you need to do, and I'll be here when you get back. I just love that. I love that about them. Then you have Batman and Talia. They're clearly into one another. But Batman's all like, I got to follow the law. I got to enforce the law, and you were very much not about the law. And so it's weird that there's this, there's this tension, this desire that they have for each other, but because of their ideologies, we just can't. It just doesn't work. And so it's messed up, but I have to say, I have to hand it to Batman that he doesn't compromise on his values. He says, look, this is the line, and it doesn't really matter how desperately I want to be with you. It doesn't really matter how wonderful I think a life with you would be. I've got my lines and I can't cross them, and you do. So this isn't going to work out. And you can tell that he's kind of sad about it, but he sticks to his guns. And then you've got Wilson Fisk and Vanessa, which is, you worry about those people who have issues. This dude's got issues. Like, Vanessa is his world, and if he can't have Vanessa, he will destroy it because he's that mad. It is, there are some boundaries that are being crossed. Don't get me wrong, I'm a romantic at heart. I love it when a guy's willing to do anything for his girl. But this guy takes it to a new level. It's clearly not a healthy relationship. And then you have Ras al Ghul, who's so dedicated to his work that there just isn't anyone there. So it's this really interesting cross-section of relationships. And I love that we get to see all of those different versions. We see what a healthy relationship looks like. We see what a not healthy relationship looks like. We see what happens when people want to be together but know that being together is bad for them, and when people don't care about a relationship at all, and just the interesting dynamics that are explored there. And I'm really glad to see Spider-Man be in a position to where he has this mission, and Mary Jane, instead of complaining about the mission or saying she's not sure if she even wants to be married to him because of the mission or whatever, in this story, she's like, no, I'm here for it. I'm backing him up. I knew who I was marrying when I married him, and I am happy to do it. So it was just great. Lots of action in this book. Like I said, lots of great artwork. It was just an absolute joy to read. Absolute joy to read. Definitely highly recommended. Because this is a crossover comic, it's not something you can pick up on Hoopla, unfortunately. So you're probably going to have to get an actual copy. My recommendation is to go to eBay and get it from a collector there, because I did a search on Amazon just to see, and there are people that are selling this comic for $471. So unless you're just filthy rich and can pay that kind of money. But yeah. All right. So that is all about the Batman and Spider-Man comic put out in 1997 by a crossover between DC Comics and Marvel Comics. Now comes the point where we hit what I think is the most important part of our show. So fasten your seatbelts, because my spider sense is tingling. Welcome to Spider Sense Tingling, the part of the show where I take the Spider-Man comic that I've read and use it as a springboard discussion to have a conversation about Jesus Christ and our relationship with him and how we can have a better relationship with him. And for this, I want to focus specifically on Wilson Fisk. Now, I mentioned in the show that he has almost an unhealthy relationship when it comes to his wife. Like, she's sick, she's dying, and he literally is bartering the well-being of an entire city to get a cure to save his wife. He is willing to let hundreds of thousands of people die, if not millions of people die, just so his wife can not be sick. And now, granted, I understand. I mean, if my wife were sick and dying and I had the power to heal her, it would be very hard for me to say, no, millions of people need to live, so she needs to go. I understand that, but there is clearly some kind of there's something broken in Kingpin's brain for him to be willing to kill millions of people just to make sure his wife can stay alive. And we see that play out in the story in that Ras al Ghul basically tells the Kingpin, hey, I can cure your wife's illness. All you have to do is help me destroy New York City. And when New York City is destroyed, I will give you what's left. So not only will you have your wife cured, but you will not just be the Kingpin of crime. You will be a king of men. You will rule under me, but second only to me. So he's basically offering Kingpin the world. And this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but what you find out is that Kingpin can't bring himself to do it. He can't bring himself to kill millions of people for the sake of Vanessa's life, because he knows that Vanessa would never look at him. Vanessa would never forgive him for killing millions of people just to give her a few more years of life. So ultimately, he decides that having Vanessa's love is more important than having Vanessa's life. He sacrifices a few extra years with Vanessa in order to achieve Vanessa's goodwill and to be looked fondly upon by Vanessa in the last years of life that she has. And that reminds me of this text in the Gospel of Mark chapter 8. Jesus is talking about things that are about to happen before his death and resurrection. And the disciples are getting kind of nervous. Matter of fact, that Peter kind of tries to rebuke him and says, "Hey, Jesus, don't say these things. These are chasing people off. This isn't the kind of thing you should say." And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." And then starting in verse 34, he says, "And calling to the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?'" So Jesus is talking, and he's basically saying, look, things are going to get tough. I have to go to the cross. I have to die. But after I'm resurrected, just claiming my name will make people hate you, will make them persecute you, will make them say evil things about you. And if you're going to follow me, you've got to be willing to die. Back then, to take up one's cross, the Romans were really wicked people. And they would make you carry your own cross to be crucified. So when Jesus says you must take up your cross, that means you've got to understand that walking this path means you are dying to yourself. You are killing yourself. You are saying that what I want and how I live and what I think is important no longer matter. All that matters is following Jesus. And what Jesus is saying is that we're in a similar position to Wilson was with Vanessa. Wilson Fisk is looking at Vanessa and saying, okay, I can either let what I want die. I can give up the thing that I want the most, which is Vanessa to be cured of her sickness. I can give that up in favor of her dying, looking at me with love in her eyes. Or I can continue to pursue this cure, get the cure, get everything that I think I want, because my ultimate goal is power, get everything I think I want, but lose Vanessa. Jesus is saying we are in a similar predicament. When it comes to following him, we can either choose to let everything in our life die. Say, my life is no longer about my dreams. My life is no longer about what I want. My life is no longer about how I want to live. I no longer get to decide what is right and wrong. I no longer get to decide what my preferences are when it comes to how I spend my time, what my career plans are. I sacrifice everything and give it all to Jesus to follow him, to gain his goodwill, to gain his love, to gain his favor, to follow after him. I have to give up everything. Or I get to live the way I want. I get to do what I want. I get to chase my own dreams. I get to pick my career. I get to decide how I want to live my life. I get to decide what's right and wrong. I make myself the king of my life and let Jesus go on his way. And to explain the severity of that decision, of that crossroads, we're not talking about picking, do you want cheese or not on your hamburger? To drive home just how important this is, Jesus asked the question, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? The crazy thing about Lazarus, the man that Jesus raised from the dead, is eventually he died again. There came a day where Lazarus went to the grave and didn't come back out. All of us listening to this podcast, at some point, we're going to die. Whether it's today, tomorrow, or several years from now, there's going to come a point where our heartbeat is going to stop. We're going to breathe our last, and we will be no more on this earth. And everything we have accumulated, everything that is important to us, everything that we just think we can't live without will mean nothing. As this whole podcast is called the Spider Fan Podcast, and I have sitting right now in my house hundreds of issues, most of them Spider-Man issues of comic books. Don't get me wrong, I love that stuff. You know, I have hanging on my wall right now the comic book issue of Amazing Spider-Man that was released the same month and year of my birthday, my wife's birthday, and the birthdays of my two sons. Hanging on my wall right now. It's my favorite part of the collection because I think it's so neat. There will come a day where I will die. And those comics hanging on that wall will mean nothing. They're just bits of paper and ink. And whatever afterlife I go to, I cannot take them with me. They don't matter at all. And I can sit here and I can do my best to accumulate all the comic book issues I want, and I may be able to get to a place where I can boast that I have every Spider-Man issue ever printed, or that I have a mint condition copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, or that I have the autographs of Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and Mark Badgley and these amazing artists who wrote these amazing tales about my favorite superhero. And the day that I die, it all amounts to nothing. What would it profit me to have all the wealth, all the stuff, and at the end of my life, not know Jesus? What would it profit me to have everything I could ever want, and at the end of my life, forfeit my soul because I have died with unrepentant sin on my heart, and I've not accepted the free gift of salvation that God gives through the death of Jesus on the cross? Or I could count all that stuff as loss. I could say, yeah, that's cool. But compared to the joy of following Jesus, it means nothing. If I choose to follow Jesus, if I say, you know what, all of my stuff, it doesn't matter. My career plans, they don't matter. My dreams, they don't matter. None of it matters. But what does matter is that I follow after the Lord. I follow after Jesus Christ. That's what matters most to me. Jesus says in his word, that's where it's at. That's the decision that needs to be made. Let all that other stuff go and chase after what is most important, and that is Jesus Christ. Just like Wilson had to let go his dream of truly being a king of men and having Vanessa for a few extra years because her sickness is cured. He had to put that aside because it was more important to him that his wife look on him with love than that she die with a smile on her face because she is proud of the man that he is, than to gain it all and her despise him. My friends, Jesus Christ has us in a very similar position. We can either choose to chase after everything that we want, and at the end of it, look Jesus in the eye and him ask, why? Why did you waste so much time on all of that stuff that doesn't matter, to be at the end of this now and have nothing to show for it, to stand condemned before God because your sins have not yet been forgiven? Why would we choose that over forsaking it all because it all gets burned up? It all goes away. When they lay me in the casket, no one's going to care about how many Amazing Spider-Man comics I have. No one's going to care about how much money's in the portfolio. No one's going to care about how successful my plans were, how successful my business was, how successful my marriage was. No one's going to care because I will be in the ground. And all that will matter in that moment was whether or not I know the Lord Jesus Christ. So, just like Wilson Fisk had to make that decision, I put this decision before you. What's more important? Spending your entire life chasing after things that you cannot take with you and that will pass away and be meaningless the moment you die? or to spend your life chasing after the one thing that truly does matter, and that is Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for listening today, guys. Before I go, I want to give a special shout out to one of the members of our Devoted Geek community who interacted with me in Discord. I'm probably going to say his screen name wrong, but it looks like it's Clariac. You can correct me if I pronounce that incorrectly. But anyhow, he reminded me that in my discussion with Dallas about on-screen Spider-Man, I neglected to mention the very first on-screen Spider-Man that I ever knew, and that is Nicholas Hammond, the Spider-Man from the live-action series in the 1970s. As a kid, I watched VHS tapes that we rented from the local Video One store over and over and over again. So he reminded me of that Spider-Man. So thank you, Clariac, for bringing that to my attention. Could not let a Spider-Fan podcast go without talking about the awesomeness of Nicholas Hammond. Also want to give a special shout out to our captain in the Devoted Geek community, Mr. Dallas Mora himself, because some of you may not know, his birthday is this month. So we are excited and eager to celebrate Mr. Dallas Mora on his birthday. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Please like and subscribe and follow on all the social media stuff. If you have any questions, the best way to get in touch with me is to email me, spiderfanpodcast@gmail.com. Look forward to seeing you all next time. Until then, keep your web shooters full, keep your spider sense alert, and keep your eyes focused always on Jesus.